Today's episode of That's What I Call Marketing is brought to you by the Indie List.
Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. We are here in Newmarket Studios today to record a very special episode of That's What I Call Marketing. It's kind of like getting the band back together a bit. After 20 years after the release of one of Ireland's most iconic ads, we're here to talk about the making of the Guinness Christmas ad. Before we get into the introductions, we're just going to take a quick look at that ad in case you're not familiar with it.
Don't forget to turn the lights off.
I won't.
Even at the home of the black stuff, they dream of a white one.
Happy Christmas.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. Before we get into talking about the ad, we'll just do some introductions and maybe tell us about your role in the ad. Pat, we'll start with you.
Yeah, how you doing? My name is Pat Hamill. I was in the creative team in Irish International on the Guinness Christmas Ad, and I was the art director. Yeah.
Mark Nutley. I was Pat's copywriter in Irish International at the time. Privileged to be working on the Guinness business at that time.
Brilliant. Damian.
Damian Devaney. I was working on the Guinness team and I had responsibility for master brand advertising. And the Guinness ad was the fourth ad we made. And I spent the first three ads learning from him how to make ads. Yeah, so that was my role. Yeah.
And him, Tom.
Tom Kinsella, and back then I was head of advertising for the Diageo portfolio at that stage, so I spent a lot of time with these boys on various projects and various other teams, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, listen, it's really great to talk about such an iconic ad. I mean, it's going into its 20th year of being on air. But I think if you think about the context of the time, Christmas ads weren't as big a thing. We didn't have the John Lewis phenomenon. We didn't have kind of the slew of ads. How did the idea of the Christmas ad come about? Maybe Tom and Damian, you might have some insights into that from the client side.
It started as a conversation with my line manager at that time, Mark Ody. We didn't have a Christmas ad in the plan. We were making an ad in India at the time, and that was on the schedule, and it was supposed to come out in October, November. And Mark just asked, it's a pity we don't have a Christmas ad, because Coca-Cola had taken over the Christmas ad sort of space. And we started talking about it, and the view was that Guinness had nearly the ability and the right to have an ad at Christmas because of its presence in Ireland. And we ended up writing a brief, going to Tom, making sure that the brief was right, even though there was no plan and there was no budget. And we sent the brief to the guys, and the campaign at the time was Knowing It Matters. And we asked them to give us an ad for Christmas for Knowing It Matters. And I think we also said, I think we might have said a Christmas ad, I don't know what that, but I definitely said we expected a Knowing It Matters ad. And the boys came back with a Knowing It Matters script, which it didn't really work because you can't tell Irish people about Christmas and Knowing It Matters.
I can't even remember what it was.
Yeah, exactly. But all of us sat around going,
I don't think it was great.
Yeah. And then, but then they had this other idea, which was a happy Christmas from Guinness to the country. And normally you have to write back within 24 hours in a very detailed fashion responses to the guys. Was it on the target market? Was it on the insight? Was it on the KBB? And all these terms. And we did for the first script, but for the Christmas ad, we just wrote back, this is perfect, don't touch it. Because we knew we had something special. And then we sat down with Tommy and started to hatch out a plan.
Because funny enough, there was actually some great Christmas ads back then. There was the Coca-Cola ad, there was the Budweiser ad, and there was a few of them. And Guinness had lost a bit of ground, and it certainly lost a bit of ground sort of over the summertime. Winter is a perfect time for Guinness to be strong, and there was a feeling that, well, you know what, we need to reclaim Christmas.
Right.
And if any brand has the right to it, it's Guinness.
How did you guys feel when it came into the agency, the brief? Was it terrifying?
Yeah. Came in July, so it was, you know, it was really quite warm. It was good. It was a good summer. Yeah, it's a big brand, and again, the brief was give us a Coca-Cola ad, give us a Budweiser, you know, give us the Guinness equivalent, and you're excited, but you're also secretly terrified.
Yeah. I mean, we've been working on the brand for a wee while, a couple of years anyway at that stage. So we were used to, there was always a weight of expectation. Well, any piece of work you did for Guinness, you know, was kind of the audience, the advertising and marketing audience, as well as the consumers were out there kind of waiting for it. So there was a weight of expectation. But obviously with something like this, you kind of went, oh, okay. There was that increased weight of expectation, but also increased creative opportunity. I thought, wow, here we go. This is, you know, and I guess whereas now you have this thing of what are brands going to do this year for Christmas. Yeah. At that stage, there was those couple of ads around that were annual favourites. It was on again, you know, like the Coca-Cola one and Budweiser. And what we were trying to create was something that would have that sort of longevity. It wasn't like
maybe 2 or 3 years.
We weren't trying to write this year's number one. We were trying to write something that would have longevity. That was our aim.
You and Shane McGowan.
Yeah, God rest him. Yeah.
Yeah, and just that interesting point that, you know, did you think it was going to be like a 2 to 3 year thing that this ad might get made? You might get a couple of years out, and we get into the getting it made piece.
My memory, and the guys know better. My memory at the time was people were sort of saying 3 years. If we get to someone last that sort of time.
3 years.
Yeah, it was a to make it worth our while, dude. We had to sort of say, okay, this is going to be a 3 year piece, and that was one of sort of the negotiation tools that we had internally in order to get it across the line.
Yeah.
Damian, you mentioned there was no budget for it. So you're going about writing a brief for an ad that really didn't exist in anyone's P&L.
Yeah, I suppose the things that were in our favour was, one, the whole of Diageo had been trained in the Diageo way of brand building 2 years previously, maybe 3, which meant that all the team and the finance team and the HR team and the senior management team all understood the terminology of marketing. They all believed in it. So the ability to communicate what we were doing and the ability to get buy-in was significantly improved, was the first thing. Second thing is we had a really experienced team. Tommy had made maybe 40 ads, 20 ads, a lot of ads. We had a really good marketing team led by, in marketing by Mark Ody, and we had ourselves, we had Grania Wafer, we had Johnny Cahill, we had Niall Tracy, we had Rory Toomey, and so the team were doing well as a team, and then we had huge respect for Irish International. Tommy knew them more than the rest of us because he worked on every ad.
Right.
But we had really good respect that we built up with the team and with Mal, and so it was working together, and we had done 3 previous ads that got the top score. But we need to have a top right-hand box, which is detailed, but we built up a bit of credibility, and because the idea was so good, there was maybe belief in the team, belief in the agency, and in a common language that we all were trained in. So that gave the context for us persuading. And in fairness then, Paul Kelly was the marketing director, and he really backed this, which was a big decision.
Yeah.
And then Charles Coase was the financial director, and he backed it. So right through the line, people backed it. Over time, but you need to give enough, we had to bring information to them, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think Dweeb was a benefit, having a common language amongst ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, there was no doubt about that. But I think what ultimately got it over the line was the power of the script, in fairness. And anybody who read the script was like, this is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And we've got to find a way to get this made. And you know, because it goes back to that thing. And again, it's about Guinness's right to be involved in Christmas. Like, who's Guinness? Well, actually, what's at the core of Guinness is communion, and what's at the core of Christmas is communion. And therefore, there's just a beautiful alignment between two great brands, Guinness and Christmas. And the script just brought that to life beautifully. And that, in many respects, that made the job. We weren't fighting. Sometimes you have to fight for a script to get made. This one was just sail it through.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but there are checkpoints in Diageo when you go through to make ads, and things have to go through one stage gate and then maybe a second.
Yeah.
But am I right? This didn't.
Well, we're looking back in time now. It's 20 years ago, I guess, the guts of. So I don't know what they do today, but certainly back then it was quite a rigorous process because the advertising, the production investment and the media spend on a particular spot runs into multi-millions, and so you've quite an analytical piece. This one, I think we might have done one round of research.
We did one round.
Yeah.
And we realised that it wouldn't pass round 2 and 3.
Yeah, it wouldn't pass muster.
And because round 2 really looked for engagement, and round 3 had an animatic. And Mark and myself went in to meet Paul Kelly, and Paul is very reflective, you know, and logical. And we had a short deck, and we said, we want to move forward without any more research. And there was silence for about half a minute. It's a long time. Paul is looking at the deck. And
he wasn't scrolling on his phone or anything.
One of those moments, you know, because there's a lot of other things he had probably on the Diageo agenda, and then he went, "Yeah, we support that." Wow. That was a big call.
Yeah,
because that allowed us then go forward without having to pass gates 2 and 3, and then focus on bringing the idea to life.
And sometimes you just got to trust the creative process, and it's called the creative process, right?
Yeah.
Like it is. It's not a science. There is no process in the world that you can start off at zero and guarantee yourself a blockbuster of an execution.
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful creative and it's an art, right? And these guys have it down. You know, and it's our job on the client side is to protect that idea, is to protect the flame of the candle and try and guide it through the process. And we knew, you know, and in fairness, everybody in the team, the broader team, knew that whilst this may not get through that really rigorous process, this was just a beautiful piece of advertising.
And how did you feel from you're at the creative side of things? Because that's a really interesting point, that the client is there to kind of protect the idea and get it through, but it doesn't always happen. You know as well as anybody, ideas can get diluted, but this had protection.
I mean, just on that as well, you know, in terms of getting it made, Christmas was a good deadline. You know, even the might of Diageo wasn't going to move it by a month. And that was a good thing, you know. Everybody was very concentrated on it, you know, and it had to be done, and that maybe helped, you know. But it definitely did help. I think that there was a good relationship and a trust, and we'd worked together before on previous things. If we'd been fresh in the door with this script, I think maybe it would have been a bit more difficult for everybody to fully commit to it, but we were a good functioning team, agency and client at that stage, and all the individuals involved in that, you know. So and there was, you know, I would say a particular trust between Tom and Mal Stevenson, who was our creative director, you know. So that really helped, you know.
The stars were all starting to align, which was great.
I used to call Mal Gandalf because he'd stride across the set, calmly, you know. And I think he adopted Tommy at one stage. They were just hand in glove. So they were very, very tight, and that meant that all those little niggles were solved between two guys. Before it even happened, you know. Yeah,
but you know, it absolutely is the job of creative director and creative team to try and, you know, defend the integrity, if you want to use a rather grand term for it, of an idea, you know. But we were lucky with the people we were working with, and we were all pretty much on the same page. But you know, if I was given a bit of advice, as I do advice to, you know, young clients and young teams now. You know, really important to work out in your head what is really important in this idea, and what's really integral to it, and what are the executional bits around the edge, and you fight for the stuff that's really important, and you remain open-minded about the rest of the stuff, you know. I mean, one example, if I can use, I was absolutely adamant that there would be no dialogue in it.
Yeah.
This was the night before Christmas.
Quiet.
It was a minute past 12. You know, everybody's tucked up in bed. There's only very few people left happening. We wanted to create this sense of stillness, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, a line of dialogue will just mess that, you know, break that stillness. And I was eventually persuaded that, you know, let's try something, you know. So I wrote the line, you know, don't forget to turn the lights out, you know, kind of thing. Even when we shot it, I was like, that's grand, yeah, it'll never make the edit. Never make the edit, you know.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the edit, it was like, yeah, that kind of works, yeah. And of course, then my late mother, God rest her, for years and years and years, would always ask me is, don't forget to turn the lights out, going to be on again this year, you know. So it became, you know, almost the unofficial title of it, you know. So you stay open-minded about stuff, and but, you know, there were certain things in it which I think we could talk about, you know, that were fundamental to it, that, you know, we didn't really have to fight tooth and nail for, because as I say, we were very much on the same page, but we would have had to if it came to it. And, you know, things like if somebody tried to tick the sociability box, you know, for instance, and said, we need that pub scene in there, which...
Because ultimately, I suppose, though, the one of the most fundamental was, and it kind of all happened in reverse. It started with the line. The rest of it wouldn't have happened if that little insight, that little thing about, even at the home of the black stuff, we dream of a white one.
Okay, so that was the starting point, was it?
When that happened, then it all flowed.
Okay.
It took a while for that to happen. And ultimately, because in Ireland, snow is... We can all remember the different years that we got the big snow.
The big snow,
2010, 2004, even for older, you know, back 1981, whatever it was, and you can remember that. And we don't get, even like our friends in the UK, we don't get that type of snow consistently in the winter. And when it happens, you know, and if it happens on Christmas Day, there's something special about that. There's a cultural thing there. And I suppose when we have, and then there's that link to the product, you know, the black stuff, a white one. And then suddenly, again, stars aligning, okay, what would that start to look like? And then all the pieces of the jigsaw started to pop into place.
Do you remember how that came about? Because I just find that fascinating, how that kind of insight to kind of the snow and you know, the Irish attachment to snow and not having it.
The first proper adult grown-up piece of literature I probably ever read was James Joyce's collection short story Dubliners, you know, and the last story in that is The Dead, you know, and I read that when I was probably, I don't know, 15 or 16 years of age, and you know, it's a piece I've gone back to again and again, and that has a monologue at the end, when the character is looking out the window of the Gresham Hotel, I think it is, and snow is falling, and snow is general all over Ireland, and you know, he goes on from there, and you know, it's a stunning piece of writing that I would go back and just read for its own value, you know, and it sort of stayed with me. So when this brief arrived, you know, that was in my head, you know, that as an image. And then I seen the film version of it, which John Huston, his last movie, had directed, you know, which kind of brought that monologue to life in a way, you know. But you know, there's not like there's any in the commercial, but that was there and sort of set a thought process going, you know, and obviously then as Pat was saying, you know, you made that integral to the pint and gave us the opportunity to do that really iconic Guinness thing of the black with the white head, you know.
And one of the things.
And then I suppose in The Dead, when you saw the movie, there was, when he looked out, it is dark, but with snow on the ground, when it lightens up and you see the detail of the landscape. And there was one or two little stills, nearly photographic actually, which kind of got us thinking, you know, maybe a less frenetic, a less cutty approach, a less you know, less dynamic kind of, maybe something that's just a little bit, as Mark said earlier, a little bit still, like it's all, you know, it's all calming down. it's midnight. It's we're getting into Christmas Day, and that's where the guy looks at the watch and it all just kicks off, and a photographic kind of I suppose piece that goes all over Ireland.
Yeah.
And it was important. The all over Ireland was really important. Little, maybe not the usual suspect, kind of little visuals that sort of symbolised what Christmas meant to different people in different parts of Ireland.
Yeah.
A key thing, which is exactly building on what the guy said, a key thing was when we said Happy Christmas to the country, you no longer were writing an ad for the target market that all the other ads for Guinness at that time did, which was 27-year-old males, I think was the target market. So that meant that you're making a piece of work for the country. So it became more of a cultural lens than a target market lens. And as Mark was alluding to, it was important that Tommy and myself and the internal team said that we can't move and sort of find ourselves having the pub open. We can't find ourselves having socialisation. We can't find ourselves having cans at home. So it moved from a consumption potential opportunity to a cultural reflection. Then we all know, what is Ireland? A minute past 12 on Christmas Eve. It should be, everybody should be home.
Yeah.
It's that piece of magic. And we would have had those discussions and ensured that the idea was kept, that the magic was kept. And I think one of the reasons it's endured, as well as the beautiful black and white and everything.
So let me get this straight, Damian, Mr. Marketing Manager. You want to make a 60-second ad for Guinness that doesn't have any consumption in it, no products, and the pub's closed. Yeah. Genius.
Yeah. So how do we show the product? Yeah. So you see the gatepost, and then you see the little bit of snow above the black gatepost. You see the horse and a little bit of snow above the where the horse is, and then you see the likes of the fox. And there was a number of scenarios that we actually had that didn't make it into the cut. We did at one stage Dublin Airport, where you had the visual of snow literally being pushed off the runway, so you had the black of the runway. So there was all these little little piece of iconography that represented the point. And let's do it in a subtle way. So maybe on the first viewing you don't get them all. Maybe on the second or the third or further down, you go, oh yeah, okay, I see what they're doing there,
And yet you end up, in effect, that it is probably 60 seconds of all product shot.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what you think it's all. It's well, it's not black and white. It's effectively black and white, and it's just subliminally, it's all product.
Exactly.
But how hard was that conversation about we're not going to have a pint of Guinness?
I found it very easy because I didn't get involved.
Let's say there were two intense conversations. But everybody eventually went, everybody to the line backed it. But there was natural conversations because it was a big spend, and people naturally tease out, can it start in the bar or can it end at home? And for me, the essence is the minute past 12.
Yeah.
That piece of magic had to be kept alive at all points during and one of the things is that I think a good ad is hundreds of decisions the right way on top of a brilliant idea, because each time there's a decision, they're all making it better or worse.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think holding true to at least that minute past 12 piece of magic and everything through that lens was important. And like on other ads you think about the target market, and this ad I had my mum in mind all the time.
Okay.
If she thought a fox was the right thing, that's because this is not just urban, and it's not just a target market, it's not just a group. This is a letter or a postcard to the country.
Yeah, we called it Christmas card because literally that's what it was.
Yeah.
And you talked about the expectation of when the brief arrived. I actually think I felt a bit more like, oh wow, when we actually had to go and make it, because because it was like everybody loved the script and everyone loved this idea, and you say, can everybody kind of
storyboards look great, but how do we do it for real?
And then it was like, okay, great, so we've signed off, so go and make it.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay. And that's when, and we've been chatting even, in the last few days, just chatting about, craft, and that's where you really, as a creative team, we felt that responsibility. We got to find people here everyone's got to be on their A game for this now. This has got to be as good as it can possibly be. You can't look back on this. Didn't know we'd be looking back on it 20 years, but you can't be looking back and thinking, oh, if only we'd done this, or if only we'd done that, which you do with most things you make, but you kind of felt with this one, that's not where you want to be. So, in terms of choice of director, in terms of choice of the people, the composer, all of those things, they just had to be the right people.
The voiceover.
And again, the team came in there because the first director we recommended, Tom turned down. There was a director who'd recently done a couple of big effects things that were involved snow and ice. And Tom said, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was, but we're not sure if he kind of has the heart for this or the right sort of soul,
Really?
And actually we went, and Tom was absolutely spot on. And we went and looked again. We found Stuart Douglas. Who was had found fame really as part of a duo with his brother as the Douglas brothers, and they were photographers. And then he went into commercials, into film. And Stuart, from the minute we started talking to Stuart, he just had the right feel for this.
The connection. The relationship that you all had, he fitted into it.
He just got what we were trying to do. And he put together on his end, his A team, I suppose, the director of photography. He had a crew that he worked with on a lot of big jobs, and it just gave you so much confidence. So from the beginning to the end, just everybody was looking at the craft, making sure that what was on the page, what was in the storyboard, actually just got better and better and better.
Sometimes I think that the hero, though, of this, as well as an amazing idea, is the music. The music was such an important decision. I mean, you guys, I think it was Mal and you guys decided we need a unique score. Up to that point, Guinness Ads didn't have unique scores. They took brilliant older songs and gave them a shot in the arm. And the decision to go for unique score, I think, is one of the main reasons why that ad is liked so much.
I mean, it certainly was the trend through the 90s and even into the early 2000s. It was the track, it was the song, and that just didn't feel right for this at all. We wanted something much more bespoke. And again, found a couple of references that and played them to people and they were, I don't know, Mark, and then I found a piece which previously had actually been used on a beer commercial on a directed by Jonathan Glazer for Caffrey's, and it was and it just had we're never going to use that piece, but there was a piece thing about it. It was from Miller's Crossing, Carter Burwell's track at the end of Miller's Crossing, the Coen Brothers movie, and it just had something about it that I really liked, which it was kind of orchestral, but it, even when it sort of reached a kind of a climax as a piece, it was kind of restrained. It never went over the top as a piece. And I thought that's kind of what we need, because we need something big here. But we need something, again, respecting that kind of minute past midnight, the night, night before Christmas, sort of that when it got big, it still had a kind of restraint about it, And again, in fairness, it was Stuart Douglas who said, I know this guy, Kevin Sargent, a composer, and I think he'd be interesting for this. And again, spoke to Kevin and sent him that Miller's Crossing piece, and he just went, I get what you're trying to do here. And he composed it, and what a great job he did on it.
Really good. When we, at one stage, we had the pictures done, and it was shot over 6 nights. Around the end of October, around Halloween time, and we were all quite exhausted because you were getting up literally to do shift work and work through the night, and the pictures were done, but actually the orchestra then came in, and we were there when the orchestra started to play, and literally there was goosebumps. I remember kind of just thinking, this has taken on just another level.
We were in the studio, and a client arrived.
Yes.
We had we put down the strings and we put down the brass,
Yes.
and there was a TV screen over the mixing desk in the studio, which had a rough edit on it, and we had a rough mix set up, and you sat on the couch, and we played it, and I looked over, and you were welling up.
I know, yeah. I looked at Mal. I thought this is because it was in this. I remember was it down an alleyway in Fulham or someplace?
Yes,
It was a small little place. A nondescript in a way.
That's right.
And then this piece of music came out, and I looked at Mal, and because up to that point you just were under a lot of pressure to deliver. Yeah. Everybody was like,
"Where's the pint?"
I was walking around at 4 a.m.
Christmas was getting close.
But once you heard that music, you realised that it was something, as you said, something else had arrived.
And when I looked at Damian, I thought that was the first time I thought, maybe we have something here.
I was going to ask, was that the moment where you thought this is, or when you were shooting it, where you get that sense?
I think that was for me. I kind of thought, okay, that's, because you are at that stage, you're caught up in all the logistics and stuff, But even the first time we went to see the edit, was myself, Pat and Mal went to see it. We went into this edit suite, and Stuart Douglas, the director, was there with the editor, and we all sat down, and we're quite anxious to see it, And first thing Stuart said is, "You're going to be disappointed."
Oh,
and
so
you could feel the air being sucked out of the room, And he said, "But don't worry, we know how to fix it."
Yeah.
Oh. Right? And then he just showed us it. And there was a slight sense of something's missing. And he said, "Yeah, there is something missing." And basically, we had only shot falling snow in the opening scene where Customs House Key, where the guy walks and looks at the watch.
Yeah.
And we sort of said everywhere else, because it was just going to be logistically too difficult, everywhere else there will just be snow down. We won't have falling snow. Right? And we thought, sure, that'll be fine. That'll work.
Yeah.
It didn't. And you looked at it, and the fall, just that, those few flakes falling through frame were the magic dust, the visual kind of magic dust, and you needed it throughout. And when we saw the first edit, it wasn't there. But Stuart said, "Don't worry, we're going to put it in everywhere because that's what it needs."
There was a genius on the post end of things, Tom Sparks, and you can do it probably now on Instagram with a filter, but back in the day,
you needed a genius.
You needed somebody to work all that out, and we had, because ultimately the snow against the dark sky is like a plate, is what they call it. We were able to apply all the snow that we shot on the first scene across all the other scenes, so that it literally felt it was done from the get-go.
And it feels like the whole way throughout, like you were saying, there was no corners cut, but still big bet, that this was going to work. And one of the things that, again, I go back to the joking aside, the no pint in the ad, but the use of the distinctive assets or creating them. We probably weren't using that language back then, Tom.
No, it was. I mean, these guys fought long and hard to keep the consumption and keep the pub out of it, which is ironic when you think about it. But it's exactly right. Right? And if it was going to be it was a Christmas card, not a beer mat, right? And that's the fundamental difference. And if you look at other great Christmas ads, and whilst there is, John Lewis created a Christmas ad every year in, year out, and everyone, I bet your bottom dollar they wish they had a Christmas ad that ran every year for 20 years, right? And the Budweiser ad before it, and you could run the Budweiser ad today, no problem.
Yeah.
And those ads don't have product in them because they come at it from a different point of view, which is basically the brand giving something back. And a knowing brand, an intelligent brand, celebrating with customers. You know what, we're just taking a moment out. It's the time of year, let's just take a breather. And actually, in doing that, you earn so much kudos from not trying to flog the pints all the time.
But also fundamentally, creatively, we would believe, so, when other brands are zigging, we need to zag. people are consuming a lot of messages out there on a daily basis. If you want to stop people in their tracks, show them something different.
Yeah.
So that's why the music was slightly different. That's why we chose a voiceover that maybe wasn't the usual suspect. That's why instead of going, hell for leather with a very quick edit, it was confident and it was a little slower and you had time just to take everything in. We needed to zag.
Yeah, the pace of the ad, I think even now it's the right pace. But Damian, just on the voiceover, you mentioned to me that the Happy Christmas at the end came about in an interesting way.
At that time, there was a little movement. Remember Happy Holidays, and it was creeping in some places. And
people are bringing Budweiser.
Yeah. And we had finished in Cork that shoot in Patrick Street. Look at the Shandon Bells. That was a night shoot, and we come to Galway for the Curragh shoot, and I was Banjax, and I was lying on the bed in the juries, and I was on the phone to Grania from II, and she was reading out 2 or 3 tweaks to Mark's copy, or 2 or 3 tweaks, and or to Pat's copy, and at the end of it, she said, "Happy Christmas," and she was in the team, and I remember I met you guys the next day, and I went, "We have to have Grania."
Yeah.
Because it was just perfect.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had a female voice in Guinness before then.
Possibly not.
And it just felt right for the Christmas ad. It also felt right. The way she said it, Happy Christmas, was so, like a little cherry on top, And that was serendipitous.
It was, yeah. And there was there was a lot of serendipitous stuff. And, you could say luck, but you give yourself the chance to be lucky, by being kind of relentless and keep pushing this, because we, everyone felt we had something special when it was on the page, but you have to keep pushing to try and make it special, actually, I know, Pat, you were saying about it starting with that line, even at the Home of the Black Stuff, but we had a version of that line, but it wasn't that line. And again, yourself kept at me. I don't know if it's quite right. And it was, we weren't in juries in Galway. Yeah. We were in some B&B. The late great Margot Tracey had put us in. But I remember sitting at this tiny little desk in my small room.
My room wasn't much bigger, I can tell you.
And on a pad I wrote it. So it was on the shoot, actually, even at the Home of the Black Stuff, The Dream of a White One. And I can't remember what the earlier version of the line was, but and I think that day on the shoot, I sidled up to you and said, "I think this is it."
Yeah, remember that.
So it is a creative process, and you be open to. You can make it better. You can make it better. You can make it better.
Yeah. That's the
all
thing,
the
you
way
have
up
to,
till as it used to be, and then there's a tape going to the station as it is now. A file being sent off or whatever. You can, and Pat mentioned the voiceover there. We wanted to try and find somebody who wasn't on any other ad, who just a different voice, a special voice.
We managed that. We managed that.
And again, through Margot actually knew John, and we had a couple of people in the mix, and Margot, just a little bit of collaboration, and Margot said, actually, do you know what? Because he's not a voiceover artist, he might just bring something slightly different to it, but he was doing, I think, the night train at the time on
he was doing whatever
RTE
radio program he was doing, and he was doing the arts show on TV.
That's right.
John Kelly is his, and I don't think he'd ever done a commercial voiceover, and I don't know if he's ever done one since. No. And he did have to, I think, ask RTE for kind of permission to do it or whatever, because of his situation with RTE. But Margot, bless her, swung it.
She sorted it. Rang him up. John.
Back then we didn't have Orlando Wood. I thought that guy was brilliant. Is it called Lemon? Is the book
yeah.
Brilliant book, and he talks about fame, and he talks about left brain and right brain. And I read that about 7 or 8 years ago, and it felt, reading that book, that this was very much a right brain piece of work. You weren't telling people everything.
No.
You were leaving lots of pieces for people to shorthand, for people to fill in the gaps. Like the fox means an awful lot more than just a fox, and the references to nature, and it just felt like a piece of beauty rather than telling everybody exactly a left brain storyline.
Yeah, being too rational.
We used that language at the time, but I think that's probably contributed to its longevity.
Yeah, because like approaching it as a fame strategy was not a...
No, it wasn't. Nobody talked about fame. No. We just talked about keeping it alive, didn't we?
Yeah, and it comes back to, I mean, that anecdote about how the line changed on the shoot. The point is, it's not formulaic.
Yeah.
Right? There isn't an algorithm that's going to churn you out a Christmas ad. It is a beautiful, creative process, and you end up with a beautiful piece of art, right? That you can draw a link all the way back to the dead, what have you. It's commercial art, but it's art, less.
Yeah.
Even visually, we were always keeping your eyes peeled for something, in an iconic way that would really work with the black and white. We actually carried around in the back of a van a Christmas tree because we thought, let's get a Christmas tree in here somewhere. And everywhere we kind of placed it and put it, just didn't feel quite right, if you know what I mean. It maybe was a bit of a usual suspect. But there were other things that just emerged that Stuart, along with ourselves, working together to kind of go, hang on a sec, this could be something interesting. And we literally kind of stop the van and kind of go, right, okay, hang on a sec, let's put some snow on that bicycle, and put it on the, just put a little bit on the saddle and see what it looks like. And if we light it a particular way, hang on a sec, that starts to look like, the point, dimensions are starting to creep in. This could be interesting, or a post box or something, which again, we shot an awful lot of stuff that didn't actually make it into the ad. It just, the balance was slightly wrong, or just that image didn't quite work. But you're constantly crafting it. You're constantly going, if we put that in, is it better? Even at the edit stage, it's like, what if we take the fox and put him further up, and how does it all work? And it changed things,
small little things can make the massive difference. But you have to have that curiosity, I think, don't you, Tom, to constantly be looking for it.
Yeah.
And you've got to give these guys the space, right? So our job very often is just to stay out of the way, right? And that's, as a client, very often that's the best thing you can do. And because we had worked together, and with Mal and Irish International, there was a great trust and a bond there between all of us, and just keeping out of their way and letting them go off and try things. Yeah. Right, in for a penny, in for a pound, and we'll see where it goes. We know what the minimum viable product is, if you like, but create space for the little sparks of magic is a key aspect.
Probably, and maybe doesn't happen as much nowadays. I don't want to get into that too much, but I think we may not give each other the space, either the client side or the agency side, to actually create something and have the moments where you can actually pod and proke at something and kind of figure out exactly the things you're saying. How do you do it?
We try to do it consistently because that's how better work happens. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't materialise, but you're constantly trying to, come up with something you think is and then keep crafting it, keep changing it to try and make it the best it can be. Yeah.
And in fairness to the guys and girls in Diageo today, there's been generations of marketeers who have come after us and who have appreciated we've got a real asset here, right? And it's 60 seconds. Yeah. Like in today's world, that's not cheap to put that on air. No. Because the number one thing that you do as a brand manager is, repackage, relaunch, resign. I want my own Christmas ad, but no, they which is brilliant. I mean, and it's testament, actually, in fairness, to Diageo and their sense of marketing, and actually, if it works, go with it.
Yeah. Hats off to the team that keep doing it, because 100%. You can say there was a few years, maybe 10 years ago, that it might have been easier to do something else, or some new team come in. So every year to bank it, and you can see more work around town to always have something new today with the footprints. Extending it even better, or making it even more current. So
they've actually done
I mean, one of the things I find most lovely about it, I usually describe it as the gift that keeps giving, and all I have to do is go and actually go on YouTube and look at it, and you just go down to the comments, and any kind of platform like that is normally a pretty cynical place. And I'll probably put the mockers on it now, but you go down 100 and something comments, and it's just people love it, and there isn't and people now talk about how it reminds them of, you know, their dad or their, you know, who's passed, and, you know, and the emotional involvement in it is amazing. But, you know, in terms of, you know, Mark Ritson wrote a piece earlier this year, I think it was based on a piece of System 1 research about ad wear out and how ads don't wear out as much as certainly people in advertising agencies or the marketing community sometimes think they do. And, you know, he ended the article by saying, this is more bad news for people in creative agencies, meaning, you know, you'll get to make less stuff. I'd love to make less stuff and put more into them.
The good stuff.
You know, and if, for me, if there's a lesson out of this for the advertising community and the marketing community, is put more love into the work, and it'll last longer, and the audience and your target market will get more out of it repeatedly. You know, that you don't get tired of looking at things that you love.
Yeah.
You know. And if, you know, and there's that. Obviously, a lot has changed in the last 19 years since we made that ad, but a lot hasn't. You know, and you still, to my mind, you can't bludgeon your way into the affections of your consumers. You know, and if you create work that they love and want to watch and watch again, you know, that's gold. You know, and the way to do that is to invest in it, you know, invest in your agency, invest in and give them the time and the space, as Tom was saying, to create something, you know.
And invest in the relationship, like actually building a trusting relationship takes time.
Key,
doesn't it?
And you gotta tell it, but it's like, you know, it's like a relationship. You gotta work at it day in, day out. Don't take it for granted. And you know, these guys, like, they're the heroes of this. Right, because they wrote it, they protected it. Mal was on their right arm, the three of them, but there was a whole agency behind it, actually, you know, going after it. But you've got to nourish that relationship, and they'd earned the right, because the work that had come before was great. And therefore, as a client, you're saying, okay, we're willing to go into battle internally, because effectively we're like an internal agency.
Yes,
trying to sell it up the line. Right. And doing that and doing it. You know, you can go in and you can sell it and not have any real passion for it, but when you're selling something that you truly believe in and it's passionate, and you know then that the crafting bit which comes afterwards, that they will give it the time and love that it deserves, then you can do that with confidence, right? But it's about just constantly working together.
Collaboration.
The relationship with AI was, in my mind, was always in that room that we had it just off your desk. There was one room where there'd be Mark or myself, Tommy, and we'd have Sheila Cunningham or April Redmond, these brilliant planners. But you'd be in there with the guys, and Mal and Sean Whitaker, and God rest him, and it was just intense. You know, it was, people were working to defend and to work things out and to find what's the right idea. It wasn't a blasé meeting. It was collaborative, but it was mutually challenging. And that's where the relationship was formed, really. And then, of course, you were always out. You might be on shoots, etc. But the mutual respect and also the desire to push was in that room a lot.
Oh, yeah, and sorry, they come across as being lovely, gentle creatures.
They do.
Let me tell you.
That's not entirely true.
If you're trying to do something with their baby,
they do a good double act. He's the diplomat, and then he puts you in your place. The stare happens as he's trailing off his comment. The stare starts to look down, and you know you're in trouble. But
when it aired first, what was that immediate reaction? Again, we weren't on social media. There wasn't that. Was there kind of just were there phone calls going around? People going, it's as good as we hoped, or was it just kind of a?
I think by the time it aired, we were all in love with it.
Right.
And I do think it was as good as it could possibly be. And I personally, there's not a piece of that ad that I would change or say I wish we did this or did that, and so by the time it went out, you were just hoping that it would get some sort of warm reaction. And it's kind of been a slow builder over the years. I don't think it was an instant classic, if you like. And it's just it's like the return of a warm, comfortable blanket year in, year out. You know, for me, I don't even need to be watching the TV, but when you hear it in the background from the first note, and it's like, it's Christmas. It's back.
That's what people say.
The first year, it snowed on Christmas Day.
I remember.
Because Mal sent us a text on Christmas morning.
Thank you, Guinness.
And you're expecting, did the snow business guys kind of, the shoot, are they outside your house? No, they're kind of away. Are they doing it on purpose?
That's right.
Outside the CEO's house.
Yeah.
The snow machine.
Going somewhere up to my brother's house, I think, on Christmas Day, and a few flakes fell, which was all it was, you know, really. Yeah. But a text went, and it was Mal saying, "Holy moly!" But
what are the chances?
Yeah, but my memory of it is it was kind of well received when it came out. But I think it is had that thing of it's just grown in stature and people's affection as the years have kind of rolled on, you know.
What's interesting is people maybe that have gone away, that have emigrated to different countries, and maybe, you know, for work and to raise a family, and maybe they come back, you know, for the Christmas period, and they grew up seeing it, and then they look forward to seeing it again when they arrive back. That sort of has, you know, really helped with the love for it, I suppose.
It has a quality as an ad that, and maybe this comes slightly from, you know, take slight inspiration from the dead and stuff, but it has a melancholy to it.
Yeah.
As Christmas does. There is a melancholy to Christmas time. You know, it's a time of reflection, it's a time of looking back, it's a time of, you know, you miss those people who aren't around anymore. You know, it has that, and the ad has that. And I think that is something, because it has that, it is grown in affection every year. You know, that melancholy sense of it is you know, it fits with Christmas so well because of that, and I think that's part of the reason, because, you know, of why it has kind of grown on people and in people's affection over the years. And, you know, and that's not something you ever looked to. That was not something in the brief, or not something necessarily in the script, you know, or something we necessarily thought about, you know. But it was in there somewhere, you know.
Even down to the guy, you know, wearing the trilby again, a little bit timeless, a little bit. Like, when is this? What's going on? He looks at his watch. There's a classic nature to the watch. He doesn't start jumping up and down or anything like that. It's all very relaxed. and then he has the dog with him, that was Mal Stevenson's dog, Georgia Stevenson's dog, Bilko. Yeah. And we wanted to make it slightly timeless in that way, little props and things that you couldn't go, oh, that's now out of fashion. That's no, you know. I suppose the only thing, Molly Malone actually isn't in front of Trinity College anymore. It has moved. That's the only really thing that's changed. Yeah.
That was a fun part of the shoot.
It was.
Middle of the night when the club's closed.
People say it must have been glorious and, you know, magical to be shooting that. It was actually pretty miserable.
Raining for 6 nights.
It was pretty
the glamour.
Dank, cold.
Open on the beach somewhere. That's the script.
Dank, cold, wet night. Yeah.
It was.
As you reflect on the ad, the story, why for you is kind of important to tell this story? Like, why does it matter to kind of bring people behind the scenes? Damian, do you have any thoughts on kind of?
I suppose over the years I've a passion for the industry, be it the marketing side or the creative side. I've been in the institute, the marketing institute, and on Effie's, Tom has been in the institute. And you put free time because you care about what we're doing, or you at least enjoy the craft and learning to do it better. And we now know from Orlando Wood and these guys that, you know, fame, ads that hit that fame trigger are much more impactful for businesses and for whoever makes them. And over the years, people have asked about the Guinness ad, and I think if anybody making ads today, be it on client side or marketing side, if they can pick up any sense, it's not like, you know, it's not like here's the rules, but any sense of the atmosphere of making an ad for themselves, that will last. And for themselves to say, I want to do something better. That's a good thing, rather than keeping it in our heads.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's the fascination with the creative process. And I think if I look back now, so success has many fathers and mothers, and I would say these two gentlemen here are the very core of this ad. On the Diageo side, there's probably a dozen people, you named most of them earlier on, who all had a hand or role. And frankly, all of them have gone on to have stellar careers, right? Yeah. So, and it's just, there was that sort of alignment of maybe it was just a moment in time. I think one of the key things is, certainly back then, there was the Diageo way of how to make an ad. It was a very systemized way. Now, what that did, it didn't give you a greater chance of getting a really fabulous ad, but it greatly reduced your chances of making a dog. Right. Right? However, the important part is, if you weren't really expert and had mastered that system, which all that team had, in fairness to them, then you're allowed to throw the system out, because you understood the fundamentals. You really got the fundamentals, and you understood that piece about creative judgment and the really valuable bit about the relationship with the agency. And the Guinness team at the time, and I mean the wider team there, and the agency, they were working hand in glove. Because remember, this is one ad we're talking about. Yeah. They were producing a volume of advertising at that time. I mean, there was so much going through, and you guys must have been worn out. But there was just ad after ad. It was relentless, right? And they were all great ads. But it was the one where we threw the system out, is the one we're talking about 20 years later.
You were allowed go more lateral. You know, there's lots of systems in place, and every brand has a manual, I suppose, or guidelines, and they're linear, you know, and there's it's all very logical, and that makes an awful lot of sense. Our brains work slightly differently, and we're taught how to think laterally. Gets us into trouble sometimes, but every now and again a little bit of magic happens, and it's based on little nuggets of, you know, that tie into what the brand is all about. Can we also then maybe marry that with a little bit of culture, what we're about emotionally, what makes us tick, and can we fuse that together and create something maybe that's a little bit special in a very different way than you've seen before.
It's why we need the client and the agency. Do you, like it really is, absolutely. Isn't it? Like, it doesn't work otherwise.
It is the relationship, and you know, for me, and I do occasionally have to remind people that I've done a few ads since. You know, but you know,
while you're at lunch talking about it,
and still doing them. But you know, it is the great example of, you know, don't underestimate the power of creativity. Don't underestimate what creativity can do for your brand, and particularly when you invest in it properly. You know, and you gather a team around you that, you know, that works, and people you can work with, and you invest in that, and you give them time and the space to create something. You'll get the return on investment, and I think 20 years return on investment it hasn't been bad, really.
And it works both ways. I mean, I think Miles Stevenson, who was the creative director in Irish International at the time, he was sort of the godfather of advertising to all of us, but he invested a lot of time on behalf of the agency in educating all of us. Right, and frankly putting manners on us when we needed the manners put on us, but did it in a way that sort of explained it and was teaching you the whole time. And again, it is that piece around just really believing that, you know, the agency, which they were fully invested in it. You know, and then that gives you the freedom to trust them and say, you know what, we'll back you.
Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing a wonderful story, never been told, getting the band back together. Damon was writing a brief during this, so well, listen, thanks a million, and thanks for listening and watching this episode of That's What I Call Marketing. We'll be back in the new year with season 3, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do share it, and thanks again.
Thanks again to the Indie List for their support of this show. If you need experienced, excellent marketing talent, go to theindielist.ie. Don't go anywhere else. theindielist.ie.